Transcripts and recordings of the podcast may not be used for any purpose without the direct written permission of the podcast owner. Welcome to Light It Up, a podcast about resilient women balancing motherhood, their careers, personal lives, and all of the challenges that come along with being a superwoman. Each week, you'll be motivated to take action to lead, inspire, transform, and empower. Now, here's your host, Dr. Aginah Muhammad. Hey, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Light It Up. I am your host, Dr. Aginah Muhammad. So excited to be back in front of the camera and behind the microphone because it's been a few months since I've been away. And I couldn't think of a better way to kick off season 5 of Light It Up than by talking about something that is very important, very critical to not only women, but men and children. You all know that I try to disseminate information that is going to be useful and information that you can share with others as well. This month, September, though we're at the end and we're bringing September to a close, but September is Life Insurance Awareness Month. And I have the privilege and honor to have Jocelyn Hope of Jocelyn Hope State Farm, which is based in Dallas, Texas, as my guest, because we think that life insurance is a topic that we need to tackle. It's a topic that many of us in our community kind of steer away from or shy from because oftentimes we don't want to think about death. But Jocelyn is going to talk to us about the importance of life insurance and kind of dispel some myths and answer some questions that I'm sure many people have in terms of trying to figure out what type of life insurance is best or why they should even secure life insurance. So my guest today is Jocelyn Hope. Welcome to Light It Up, Jocelyn. How are you?
I am awesome, Dr. Aginah. Thank you for having me. It is a true pleasure and an honor. It's a gift that you bring to the community in hosting these. And so to be a part of something like this really matters to me. Definitely an honor to be here. And I hope that through sharing that even one person, learns something that maybe helps them to put the topic in perspective and to give them the opportunity to just really think about the choices that they have for their family. And that's our goal today. So I'm glad to be here. Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much for agreeing to be my guest. We definitely have talked about the fact that we wanted to tackle this topic. But before we get into the topic, why don't you just tell the audience a little bit about yourself? I oftentimes will brag about the fact that I have some awesome classmates. And so I don't shy away from telling that, my Morgan Park, fellow Morgan Park MP High alums are doing some amazing things. And so we did attend high school together. You're a little bit older than me. You're only 1 year.
Oh, just a little bit.
But why don't you just, give the audience, tell people who Jocelyn is.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So we are kindred siblings from the Morgan Park family. And when I think about Morgan Park, wow, growing up on the south side of Chicago, a gift, right? When you think about being able to put kind of in context all the things that we really had available to us and the development going through school there at Morgan Park, just a blessing. And so I finished school at Morgan Park and really originally thought I was going to be an engineer and really quickly kind of shifted gears. And so my career took me on a path. I got my undergrad in psychology at Chicago State. And then I started law school there in Chicago at Loyola University. So I have a law degree and I actually acquired my MBA while I was getting my law degree. And, I say all that just to say, just lots and lots of education. I've always been thirsty for learning. And so for me, part of, being the recipient of so much, opportunity to learn really made my heart always so eager to support and help other people learn. And I started my career really, while I was going through law school at a nonprofit there in Chicago, it was the National Black MBA Association. And love the organization. They supported me all the time that I was in school. And when I think about the very first thing that I learned from them was I couldn't even answer the telephone until I knew the agency's mission statement.
Mhm.
And I thought that was so powerful as a 21-year-old, kind of learning the ropes in my first job. But when I learned the mission statement, which was to increase the economic and intellectual wealth of the African American community, I was like, I can get behind this. And that mission statement has been one that I have always taken with me on my journey. And so while I started a nonprofit, I had a lot of opportunity to use the skills that I had learned in school. And I had a career in leadership with Home Depot prior to coming to State Farm. But when I found State Farm, their mission statement was one that I really said, wow, this is something I can jump behind. The mission is literally threefold. It's to help people manage the risk of everyday life. So you and I both have this reality. If anybody, purchases a car or a home, there are legal implications that we must carry a certain amount of insurance.
Mhm.
But there's nothing that really shares or tells those folks what are the other risks that they have and how do they protect them. And so my journey really went from, helping people manage the risk of everyday life to really recovering from the unexpected when things happen. And we'll get an opportunity to talk, and I'm happy to share more. But I've had my fair share of unexpected things happen in my life. And
Mhm.
so I have a real passion and heart for helping my clients and really just folks in general understand what those risks are and how do you manage them so that in the event that something happens, you are prepared as best you can. None of us can, prepare ourselves for a lot of the emotional shock of a major crisis.
Mhm.
But being financially prepared and having your, ducks in a row really matters, because the ultimate part of the mission that I have in the work here is to help people realize their dreams. And
Mhm.
that's something that just it inspires me every day to realize all of us have a dream. And both you and I, as little girls off the south side of Chicago, had dreams.
Mhm.
And I'm proud when I look around because there's so many of us that are absolutely walking in that favor and living their dream. And I don't take that calling lightly.
Yeah.
So I really embrace just the opportunity to serve. I have a servant's heart, starting in nonprofit, and then really being able to take a leadership role and an opportunity in State Farm for many years, but coming back to my first love of teaching and helping. So, that's a little bit about kind of my background. I've been with State Farm for 20 years now almost, and just recently back in business for myself here in the Dallas area after having an opportunity to just get the chance to serve in this role and love what I'm doing.
Awesome. Now,
Mhm.
I'm just curious, how did you manage to transition into what was the deciding factor for saying, you know what, I want to go into the insurance industry? I know you and I had talked previously, and I shared with you that my late father was an insurance agent.
Mhm.
And he worked for there were 2 companies that I distinctly remember. One was United, and, I remember it was on 87th, right past Ashland, because I would go into the office with them sometimes. And the other, he was an independent producer for Jackson National Life.
Oh
Uh,
wow, they're great. Yeah.
yeah, based in Lansing, Michigan. So
Hmm.
I grew up, and I think, honestly, I kinda took it for granted. Because in our community, I don't know how often we sit down around a dinner table or just in conversation
That's
discussing
right.
insurance. So
Mhm.
I recognize that I have taken for granted the fact that I've always known about the importance of the insurance, but what was it about working in this industry that kind of drew you
Yeah.
to go into that field?
Um, so first I have to just acknowledge the wealth of what your father was able to bring to your family. because, quite frankly, it's not just the conversations about life insurance that are missing for most of us. It's the financial education. It's the really trying to learn how to make the proper investments that allow us to, not just secure our families and our futures, but also take it to that next generation. And when I think about the purpose of life insurance and how it really has had such a positive impact, it can be a differentiator for folks with that wealth gap, right? And
Yeah.
that's big. And, when I think about my own family, I literally, so when you say, how did I find life insurance found me. Let me tell you, I was 26 years old with two kids, and I was working as a leader in Home Depot, and we were in a management session. We were planning, for the next year, and we were all kind of looking at our 401k packages and talking about benefits. And all the other folks in the room, one, were a different sex than me. So it was an all male room.
Mhm.
And I was the only African American in the room.
Mhm.
And so, I kind of sat there with my ears perked because there was quite a bit of conversation going around about what type of decisions people were making to prepare themselves with their benefits and for the future. And the topic of life insurance arose. And I literally like kind of perked up. I had never talked with anybody in my family about life insurance. I had never even considered life insurance. I'm being very frank with you. I had a State Farm agent that was my agent that I think just made some assumptions that I kind of knew what I was doing and I had everything set. And he and I never had conversation. And so when I was sitting there and I heard the conversation get going and a couple times life insurance came up, I immediately was like, I need to look this up. And this is kind of the early days of the internet. I get on the internet and I start looking and I'm like, I got to get something. I have kids and I didn't even realize how much in jeopardy I would have been had something happened to me with these beautiful souls that I had brought in the world and all the dreams and visions that I had for them.
Right.
So I bought my first policy online with no guidance, no understanding. And it wasn't until about 3 years later when I became a licensed professional and I had gone through my own studying and training to become an agent, and the light bulbs went off. I'm like, oh my goodness, like I'm glad I had something, but I didn't have what I needed.
Right.
And that's the real essence of being able to make an informed decision. You've got to have the information, right? Someone has to be able to help you think through what are those considerations that you need to personally be thinking about. Each of our scenarios are so different
Right.
and they change over time. So, like where I was as a 30-year-old mom and where I am now as a mom,
Right.
are just a little different, right? They're just a little bit different. And the things that I want to protect or ensure that I make sure I can, still provide for my family if I don't make it home today, those things are different now. And so, the other thing that I appreciate about, hearing that your father was in the business is that you had a very early kind of understanding of some of these things and you've been able to adopt and incorporate them. That's what I love doing for people when I meet with them.
And as I'm listening to you talk, one thing that struck me is when you talked about the fact that you were looking at your benefits package at work. Now, sometimes you'll hear people say, well, I have life insurance with my job,
Yeah.
right?
Hmm.
What can you, why is it important to have additional life insurance? Because what is it that people may be missing in terms of their understanding about how that life insurance policy that they have on their job really works?
Yeah, so that's an excellent question. So first, if somebody has it at work, I'm just saying whoop whoop, right? Because that's a benefit that is really a blessing, right? Having a company that will give you a benefit that can be paid to your family if you were to pass away is a true gift, right? So I'm never going to look a gift horse in the mouth, right? That's a part of a benefit package in many cases that isn't moving forward. A lot of things have changed with jobs and the benefits that are offered, retirement packages, and so forth. And so, if someone has life insurance at work, I think that's wonderful. The real question is, do they own it? And I will speak very openly. When people buy a policy at work, it is a group policy, which means that you're lumped in with an entire group of people and you're going to get a rate for your age, right? But it's not going to give you the ability in pardon me, in most cases, to take that policy with you if you leave the company. So you don't own the policy. Ownership is key with life insurance because the only thing that will help you with a life insurance policy is if you have it the day that you pass away.
Right.
That's an important factor. So when people talk about having it at work, I think it's a phenomenal resource. The next part of that conversation is let's talk about what that benefit looks like. And is that the right amount for you? Right. Because I've heard people share, well, my company will pay 1 year, all the way up to my company will pay 5 years. Right. So there's a variety of different time frames. And the tip is it's an annual salary. So they'll take the person's annual salary and they may provide 1 year's benefit or they may provide five. What we tend to do is we say, let's figure out what your entire need is overall, right? How do we determine how much you need? And I can talk more about that. We can, segue into that in a second, but it's really starting with what's your total need?
Mhm.
And then what do you currently have? And we can take the work into consideration because it is available to them at that time. The dilemma that many folks face, and you and I both know that the transitions in the job market have been vast, right? If you ask most people, I would say 80% of people in the last 5 years would tell you they're not with the same company that they were with 10 years ago, right? Lots of transition in the market, particularly with COVID, particularly with the younger generation. And so if you have a policy at one company and you leave and go to another company, that policy doesn't go with you, right? Or if you're in between jobs and you don't have a job, you just lost your coverage. God forbid something happened to you during that span of time where you don't have coverage from your employer. The last thing that I would say around employer insurance is that there are benefits that you can have with life insurance. The policies that you get with a employee-based group policy are typically more term-based policies. So you're going to get that during the term that you work at the company. They don't transition to you after. My father's a perfect example. He spent all his life, he had insurance working as a teacher and at the post office. And when he retired, they gave him like a very, very small, maybe $10,000 policy to take with him. So in the grand scheme of what you want to have when you pass away, the work policies are one that we want to be able to have a good conversation about. How does your company's policy work?
Mhm.
And what are your immediate, short-term, and then long-term needs for life insurance?
Okay, so in terms of if I'm looking to increase or add on to the life insurance that I currently have, if I have life
Mhm.
insurance through my employer, what's the first question that I should ask if I'm well, how do I find the right agent? Like, what are the
Yeah.
questions that a consumer should ask when they're looking for an agent or a company to purchase their life insurance?
Yes, excellent question. And my eyes perked up when you mentioned that your dad worked with Jackson National a while back, right? Because we have a partnership with Jackson currently, and I know them as the number one annuity company in the U.S.
Yep.
And so I say that because the type of company matters, right? Many of us are going to live our full life expectancy. We're going to be well into our 80s before we ever even have to tap into a policy. That company needs to be a viable company, right? They need to have good credibility. And so, I'm getting life insurance is important, but who you get it with really does matter, right? So
Mhm.
an A-rated company is one that I would look for, right?
Mhm.
Working with somebody who wants to get to know you personally, I think is really important. You get a lot of ads online, or you get a lot of kind of dial this 1-800 number, and it's like a one size fits all. And that's not the approach that I would recommend, right? Every one of us has different needs. Working with someone who can slow down, get to know you, ask the proper questions, put your scenario in context, and then say, okay, Dr. Aginah, based off what you've shared with me, here
Mhm.
are some of the considerations that I want to bring to the table. And so, when you think about, pardon me, when you think about someone taking that personal approach with you, that really matters. You know, I'll be very frank with a lot of folks in our market,
Mhm.
people think it's all about everybody wants cheap. And cheap is not necessarily what's effective or what's needed. But when people don't have enough information, they make a decision based on something like price. Same
Mhm.
with car insurance, right? Or home insurance.
Mhm.
Is that the right decision to be made, right? Am I going to be protected properly? And, you know, one of the things that I would just say, you know, as you're thinking about who to work with someone who genuinely cares about you and your family.
Mhm.
Somebody who's going to, you know, share everything with you and let you choose. You know, this isn't a blanket approach. This isn't a one size fits all. This isn't a, I just want to hurry up and get, you know, something done,
Mhm.
but a more personalized approach. And that same person, with professionals in the industry, if they're really truly life insurance professionals and people who I've been in this industry 20 years, I have designations to prove it. I continue to educate myself, right? I have two significant designations. I have a chartered life underwriting designation. So I went back to school after all of that school that I had already had, just to sharpen my saw to make sure that I'm staying abreast of all of the more current and recent changes in the industry. So having a resource that's knowledgeable and educated.
Mhm.
And then the second designation that I have is a chartered financial consultant. So I'm also in a position to be able to help my customers, not only with life insurance, but to put that in context with everything else that they're planning. So that's important, having the right company, having the right resource from the person that you're working with, them being knowledgeable, but also them being caring. And to add on to that, it's not a one and done.
Mhm.
What I share with people is that we're putting together really a life insurance plan for right now. This needs to be revisited, right? Because things in your life change and we have opportunities within your life insurance policies in many cases, like you asked about this work piece.
Mhm.
Typically, a work policy, you can't add on to that policy.
Right.
But when you own your own policy, you can say, hey, you know what? I would like to convert some of this to permanent so that I can keep it for the long term. And I would like to increase the amount of coverage that I have. Hey, I just bought a brand new home. I want to make sure that this house is going to be taken care of and paid for in the event that I don't make it home
Mhm.
so that my family doesn't have to move. Right. So
Mhm.
for a new home buyer, that may be a trigger to have another conversation. So having someone that really is partnering with you, really, as I call it, your really financial journey, right? And protecting all those things that matter most to you so
Mhm.
that you can realize your dreams. Because when we're not protected, you and I both know what happens.
Yeah.
I have seen 1,001 GoFundMe's, and
Yeah.
it's just not, it's not cool. It's not fair. It's not cool. It's, it takes away the person's dignity
Mhm.
that has to make one because the preparation wasn't there. And
Mhm.
so, you know, when we start thinking about how do we take and move the ball forward, I know both you and I come from parents that many of the folks that we grew up with, very grounded, very disciplined, that work hard ethic. Now it's time to take that work hard ethic and the education that we have and just add on to that so that we're enabling this next generation to not have the wealth gap, to not take those steps backwards, right?
Right.
So, you know, what we tend to see is when somebody has, you know, a loss and there wasn't the preparation, monies come, but they have to be pulled from grandma's money that she put aside for somebody, maybe for a scholarship for college, right? Or they have to be pulled from, you know, resources that were allocated for something else. And that is where instead of being able to have the ball go forward, instead of being more solid, more financially protected, we're actually taking steps backwards and we're not even getting closer to where we want it to be.
Right.
So we have to mitigate those risks, right? Um, when I think about how quickly we go sign up for car insurance, right?
Yes.
People tell us we have to have it. We sign up for it. It's a given. People pay it all the time and don't think anything about it, right? My home insurance, for example, I never want to use my home insurance. I love my house. All my family memories are in there. Like the house is cool. Like, I mean, like the house is great, but it's really what's in it, right? So I pay my home premium every year religiously. I don't want to use my home insurance, right?
Right.
The reality, though, is if I didn't have that and a major crisis happened in my home, now all the investment that I made is gone. And what I tell people when I'm working with them is to ask themselves this question: what is their biggest asset? And I pause and I hear everything. Like I had this conversation with my 21-year-old because we do a financial planning session, right? What's your biggest asset, Jason?
Mhm.
Right? And I have it all with all of my clients. And the responses vary. But my son told me it was his car. And I thought, oh my gosh, this is adorable, right? Because this little car is not okay. But he said it was his car. And I thought, you know what? At least he gets it that he has some value because it's paid off.
Mhm.
But I said, son, when you graduate from college, you will get employed. What would you like to make each year? Of course, he tells me $1 million. I
Mhm.
said, me too.
Right.
Because he's 21 and he's ambitious and he has that mind. I said, great. If that happens, that'll be phenomenal.
Right.
But in the grand scheme of things, what would you like that to be? Right? Okay, let's even randomly settle on 50,000. Great. How long do you plan to work, Jason? Well, I'm not going to work but until I'm 50. Great, Jason. That's awesome. Like I'm 50 here soon. So I'm still going to be working. We shall see, but you can set that plan. But let's just take it to typical retirement age. And you take that 30,000 and you multiply that by the time you come out of school, right?
Mhm.
And you say what that will look like over those number of years. And what I help people to realize, give me just a second, I apologize, I need to put that, okay. What I help people realize is the amount of money that they have the ability to make in their lifetime is really their greatest asset.
Right.
You're your greatest asset. It's not your car
Mhm.
and it's not your home
Mhm.
because you wouldn't have either of those if you weren't alive and you weren't working and you weren't preparing yourself or contributing to make those possible.
Mhm.
Any other asset that anyone has only comes from the fact that that person is here to make it happen. So we really go through this kind of scenario of we protect these assets that are fleeting. The car is depreciating, right? But we aren't really protecting the thing that's going to be here for the long term, which is our individual selves, to make sure that whether I'm here or not, because I can't dictate when it's time for me to go. And when it's time for me to go, I'm gonna be like, bye y'all. I'm not sticking around. Okay. I'm ready. I just try to keep it in perspective. None of us can control that date or that time, but we absolutely can prepare ourselves.
Right.
And of all the policies that we have or we get, I may or may not ever use my car insurance policy, right? I pray I don't have to. My home, the same thing. Most homeowners have a claim every 19 years, right? Very, very randomly do we have to leverage those policies. But if the reality that has happened for since the beginning of time is still true,
Right.
every one of us have a date.
Right.
And how things will go when that day comes for us is going to depend on our planning
Mhm.
and our understanding of our options. So,
Yeah. And to take it, I guess, bring it together, life insurance, it's more than just covering your burial expenses, right?
mhm,
It's how are your children, if you have children, how are they going to be taken care of? What are you leaving behind for them so that they
mhm,
can continue to exist and still live, you know, along the same lines that you were able to provide for them?
that's
What are
right.
you leaving for them in terms of a legacy? I don't know if we really look at it in that context, or if it's just, oh, I've got to, pay for the funeral service, but
Right.
then
Yeah.
you've got people
What
left
about after
behind.
that?
Right. What about
Yeah.
after that?
Yeah.
And the one thing so my father, once a child in our family got a social security number, you were getting an insurance policy and you were getting an annuity. That was it.
Okay.
And so I thank God that he had that knowledge,
Yes.
and that desire, because that was the one thing that I remember. He would tell everyone, you need life insurance. You
Mhm.
know, he talked about whole life, universal life, term. And I remember him sitting down with people, talking to them about, the different type of policies and plans that they should have. And even as I had to go back and do my own assessment. Like you said, things changed.
Right.
Now, I mean, I've been divorced for 9 years. I have 3 children. And as I started to do my own estate planning, I had
Mm-hmm.
to reassess. Okay, sure, I have these policies that fortunately, I have policies where my mom is the owner of policy.
Mm-hmm.
My dad didn't care. He was going to take out in life insurance on this season. But um and I remember him saying, you want to get this coverage for, your twins. You want to do this, you want to make sure that they have this already in place
Right.
so that it's growing and it's maturing as
Yeah.
they're getting older. And so the financial aspect of it, like you said, with creating the generational wealth, and that is the one thing um, I think in our community where we differ, where others have that
Right.
advantage because they have that knowledge and they can use their insurance policies for different things, depending on what type
Absolutely.
you have, right?
Absolutely. Hmm. Now you're scratching the surface, right? Because just the thought of like you need it, we kind of I think we hear it, we allude to it, but what do we need it for?
Right.
Right. And so, this model, if you will, of like how life insurance can be leveraged is very vast, right? And the type of policy. So I would say there are probably four key reasons that people consider life insurance and how it supports them and their family through a tragedy, right?
Mhm.
So, the very first one will be if I have liabilities, right? I'm a working mom. I have liabilities. I still have a home, right, that I'm paying for that I need to be able to ensure will be available to my family so they don't have to move because mom isn't here anymore,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
Cars. I still have student loan debt, right? You don't go through, a generation of where I took care of that myself. I still have that on my plate, right? In addition to that, I bring home a certain amount of income every month, right? So if I don't come home, the income doesn't keep coming,
Right.
right? And all of us have to consider that. How do we replace income? How long do we replace income?
Mhm.
It really depends on our scenario, right? And like you, I have been previously married. I had life insurance set up really with kind of that as my model.
Mhm.
And I divorced and remarried. And
Mhm.
so reconsidering what that looks like in a new model is very important.
Mhm.
Setting up policies to make sure that the things that you share, right? We're both contributors to something. Well, if I can't do my part, is there a policy that will provide me a benefit to be able to contribute that part so
Mhm.
things can still progress in the order that we had our dreams aligning, right? In addition to that is the main thing that we end up talking about as a community, which is funeral, right? And I've learned now to really look at that funeral as a funeral or a final celebration
Mhm.
because as a young mom, just like your dad did for you all,
Mhm.
I was an agent back in 2004. In 2005, I bought policies for all of my kids.
Mhm.
They were permanent policies. So, one of the values of a permanent policy is that it's going to grow cash value, meaning it is an asset and it can be used as an asset when you're applying for a home or you're trying to get a car. They will say, what kind of money do you have in the bank?
Mhm.
And they will say, what other assets do you have? A permanent life insurance policy will equip you to say, I have additional assets here. This is the cash value in my life insurance policy. Well, I got policies for my young kids. In
Mhm.
fact, I got policies that would be paid up in 15 years. So they were permanent policies that I paid for 15 years and then they were done.
Mhm.
And those policies go on until forever for my kids until they pass away.
Mhm.
And Dr. Aginah, you know this about me, but our viewers don't. I had the, tragic circumstance of losing my firstborn son
Mhm.
2 weeks after he finished Clark Atlanta University.
Mhm.
And never in a million years would I believe or think that the industry that I've been a part for 20 years is the one that becomes this anchor for me in just such a tragic time, just
Mhm.
such a tragic time. And I call, that portion where we're thinking about funerals or final celebrations. I'm like, I don't think I can bring myself to do a funeral for a 23-year-old, right? I'm like, I just don't think it's in me.
Mhm.
but I can absolutely celebrate my baby's life. And
Right.
I was able to do it in a way that was so edifying and beautiful and reflective of his beautiful soul
Mhm.
because I had life insurance in place. And so we had a celebration of life.
Mhm.
And we brought in family members from, we had 85 family members in Jamaica,
Mhm.
his favorite place, to
Mhm.
acknowledge and celebrate the gift of life that he was. And, I know that's not easy for people to hear because it's not easy for me as a mom,
Yeah.
because going through something like that is something you just literally never expect. But
Mhm.
I can tell you that without having those policies in place and being in a position to just take some time away, I was able to, step away from work. I
Mhm.
was able to be supported with friends and family. But the financial side was an important way for me to honor my son.
Mhm.
And, just a true gift of life. Never did I think that I would use his policies. I thought I'm purchasing policies to be able to give him, because
Mhm.
when you buy policies for kids, the two main reasons are you want to make sure that they always are insurable,
Right.
right? As we age, things happen. I've had folks that, whether it's, they become diabetic in their early adulthood, or, people, God forbid, get cancer or something like that. They're not even eligible for life insurance. So I know one of the things that we had kind of contemplated making sure we share with the audience is, how do you get it?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So, first of all, it's not available to everybody. So, we need to be mindful of that. And it's not available at all times. So, we've got to go, we've got to make sure that we're insurable,
Mhm.
meaning that we are healthy and, we have an opportunity. And there are many things that even when people have ailments, excuse me, even when people have ailments, they may still qualify for life insurance. There's two elements. There's an application process, and then there's a medical. And the end that will allow a person to be considered for life insurance. So getting a policy early for your kids, I think, is such a great thing to do,
Mhm.
because you ensure that no matter what happens with them, they will have a policy in place.
Right.
The policies that I had for my kids also had a rider, right? So the policy had a rider, which means that I could add additional insurance 7 times throughout their life.
Mhm.
Another bucket amount of money I could add into their policies, right? Very good planning strategy, right? For a young person's policy, very affordable policies, and excellent for cash value. Now, don't tell your kids they have cash value.
Right.
Because then, if you do, you will be having conversations like I did with my young adults. And they
Mhm.
were like, Mom, what about that policy? I'm like, no, 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 sir.
Yes. I agree. That was one thing that I wish my father had not told my children because
So
they have.
you can relate.
Yes, I can
You can
relate.
relate. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
But what an incredible position to set your children up to be in, knowing that they do have assets that they could potentially draw from if there's something that they want to do within reason.
Right.
You
Right.
know, within
That's
reason.
right. That's
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I think it is also just this, like, when I call it the gift of life, I say that because I feel like anytime we're transferring wealth and providing assets to our children, it's a good foundation.
Mhm.
But we have a variety of options, and I think it's all based off of an individual person's. Hey, this is what I'm interested in. In fact, I'm working with a young lady right now. She doesn't have kids, but she wants to have a policy that allows her to grow her assets inside the policy, and then she can take the liberty to be her own bank, right? Pull money out
Mhm.
and leverage when she's ready if she needs from her account.
Mhm.
Her intention is to say, hey, I want to have an opportunity to have a policy in place that I own. And she also realizes that she may not always be single, and she may decide to marry and have a family, and those assets will have been growing all that time, right? So here's what I would say. There's a couple things that when we think about what type of policy, I kind of just jumped right in with the kid policy and started talking, but I would say from 0 to 80, there are options, right? So you talk about just the variety of options that are available. The age piece is there are options available from a baby, and as soon
Mhm.
as a baby is born, like you said, your father kind of got you guys insured. I think we've got, like, a week of the baby surviving, and you can get the baby insurance policy. Yeah, the time frame is a week to 2 weeks. I can't remember exactly right this second. But what I would tell you is very early, you can get a policy in place all the way to 80 years old, right? And so we literally just introduced a new policy in our company that allows for you to get no underwriting. It's a guaranteed issue policy, really for this market of folks that may or may not be insurable, but there are options now for them. And so when I think about kind of where I'd start that discussion is, you have to think about the liabilities that you have, the income that you want to replace, a funeral or final, right, celebration of life. But then the last piece will be any additional expenses, right? Are we sending kids to college in the time frame that we're still expecting before those kids are out of school? Are we taking care of an elderly parent? Do we have people who depend on us for any other resources, right? Am I a business owner? What will happen to the business if I'm not there? Are there expenses? If anybody relies on you for anything, I always say, put your hat on and start to think, what would they do if I wasn't here? And do I want to position things for them to be able to do it when I'm not here? And so I kind of put, my mind around the whole extra bucket, right? So of those things that we just talked about, some of those things are in a certain time frame. Those are term needs, right? I have a 13-year-old, so I'm still in the very, throes of raising kids. So I still got a long way to go before he's out of the house and done with college. But at that point, within 5 or 10 years of him being out of school, I will really kind of be like, I'm out that space, right? And so I have a term insurance policy to cover the large majority of these needs that I have, of making sure that I replace my income, making sure I can pay off my home, making sure that, anything that they would need during this kind of early, while I'm raising them, extra monies for the car or something when they get to be 16. If I wasn't here, I would still want something like that to happen. Right. Those are term needs. So I have a policy that is going to make sure that until I'm 60, I'm pretty much covered to take care of all that stuff. And then after I'm 60, when my kids hopefully are like gone and on their way, I still have certain things that I want to make sure happen. I definitely want to make sure nobody's burdened with planning any kind of final celebration of life for me. I definitely want to make sure that each of my kids is gifted with a certain legacy from me, right? There's a certain amount of money that I put aside for that. I want to make sure that there's a donation to my son's foundation, which I started to honor him, right? So whatever, it may be to someone's sorority or fraternity, or it may be to their church, or it may be to their favorite aunt, right? Those are decisions that if we're being proactive, we can make. And so I have permanent policies as well that I have in place to cover all those things that will happen. They're going to happen no matter what age I am. And so you're permanent and term, right? And you will realize insurance is very affordable, right? In most cases, term insurance is very affordable. You can get it all the way from like 18 years and up. And, policies really, really affordable. I mean, less than $20, less than $15 in some cases. Here's one of the things that I share with people all the time. When you ask me about what it takes to get life insurance, and it's an application process and there's a medical, right? Right. You know how our people can get. You start talking about medical and everybody's like, no. Well, let me encourage you all. Let folks do a medical, because you have the ability to come back preferred, meaning you're better than the average person your age in health and in longevity perspective. You're better. So why pay the same rate that everybody that's in the middle is? If you're, in good shape, you're active, you may come back having to pay much less than everyone else. And then when you get the policy at work, I've seen some people's group policies at work where what they're paying, I can get them a permanent policy because they're paying with everybody in that bucket. All the people that work go into that bucket. And so their rate is not based off of a personalized approach. But when you take a medical, that gives you a personalized approach. I've had people come back and they were like, so we have certain levels to this, but they've come back like extremely preferred, where it gave them the ability to add, 100,000 or more to their life insurance for the same rate. Right. So don't be leery of letting the process be the process, because you can absolutely be rewarded for it. Right.
and they come to your house.
Yeah, they make it simple.
You
They
don't
make
have to leave home, wait in
it.
the doctor's office, they come to you. You mentioned term and permanent. Now, is there a difference, just in case people don't know, with like whole life, universal? How do those
Yes.
terms measure up into uh, the discussion about term and permanent?
Yeah, that's an excellent question because you hear those terms a lot, right?
Mhm, mhm,
So, term means that it's going to be for a term period. It could be for 5 years, 10 years, 20, 30. And it has the perspective of based off your age. So, we're going to pretend I'm 30. I'm 30 and I'm going to get a 20-year term.
mhm,
When I turn 50, this policy is going to expire,
mhm,
right? The
mhm,
problem with the term policy is that when that policy expires, if I look to get it again at 50, because of the projection of what happens over time in our life, at 50, it's going to cost me whole lot more, a
mhm,
whole lot more to get a term policy, right? So that's where a lot of people weigh it out and say, you know what, I probably need to make sure I have something permanent so that I don't have to deal with that as I get older when my policy expires,
mhm,
right?
mhm,
Permanent policies have their variety of permanent policies, right? A whole life policy is what we probably hear most common. It
mhm.
means that you're going to pay your annual premium every year for your whole life.
Right.
Okay. Every year. And if you miss and don't pay, the policy will lapse, which then means that all of the great investment of paying into that policy will not be available to you.
Mhm,
So you want to make sure two things that I tell people all the time. Make sure, while it may be intriguing, like when we go to the auto store, and it might be intriguing to go buy the Cadillac with all the features and bells and whistles, if we can't afford it, it's not going to help us, right? We have to buy life insurance that's affordable and
mhm,
in our budget because you have to maintain it for those years, particularly the life insurance that we're talking about from a whole life perspective. That's what whole life means. It means that I would pay it every year,
mhm,
and for some people, that can be overwhelming, right? They're like, oh, the thought of that, like if we're getting a cycle, it's not that big. But when you think about it, it can be overwhelming. And
mhm,
that's where limited pay can come in. So
mhm,
the limited pay policies that I bought for my kids, they're also a whole life policy, but
mhm,
they're paid in a certain number of years. So that's what a limited pay is.
mhm,
A universal policy is also a policy that can be a permanent policy if we keep it up.
mhm,
Okay. A universal policy is similar to a whole life policy because you're going to pick a death benefit, you're going to make a payment, but the universal policy has some flexibility.
mhm,
As you grow cash value in that policy, what happens is, let's just say you have a really bad year, you lose your job, you're like, oh my goodness, I can't make this payment. In a universal policy, it's you don't have to make the exact same payment every year like you do with a whole life. In a universal policy, you have some flexibility. But where we have heard in the market, and many of you have probably heard about, oh my goodness, I wouldn't pick a universal life policy because they can run out, is that people get a universal life policy and are paying the minimum. And then if they go and try to like not pay for a while, there's not enough in the policy to keep it going, right? So you want to make sure your policy doesn't lapse. The
mhm,
universal policy affords the flexibility, but we want to make sure that we're paying enough to keep the insurance in place. Okay.
mhm.
Um, did I hit all of them? So
Yeah, because I specifically asked about the whole and
okay,
difference between universal.
yeah. Now, for some of the folks, like the young lady that I told you, she's single, and her real intent is to say, I want to have a policy that I can really fund well. And it's called an overfunded UL, right?
Mhm,
Overfunded ULs have the ability because the policy is only asking for this much in a payment. If you
mhm,
pay more, now you're going to start growing your cash value faster,
mhm,
right? That's an opportunity for folks as well. So you start to see the flexibility of that policy be utilized. And that's something that I think, it just depends on what the goals are for an individual.
mhm,
The type of product comes up when we start to learn more about, okay, what are your goals, right? And this wealth gap that I would say we continue to see, that you mentioned earlier. Instead of just looking for policies that take care of one component of why people would buy life insurance, realizing that life insurance has the ability to be a living asset, a living asset. So not just, oh, when I pass away to my heirs or my beneficiaries, but a living asset in that I'm able to use this policy that has a lot of benefits while I'm living and provide value when I pass away.
That is something that I hope it resonates with the people who are listening and viewing, that they're looking at the overall holistic perspective of acquiring life insurance and not just looking at it from one lens and one lens only,
Right.
but the holistic perspective of it. Do you, as an insurance agent, broker, do you work, because this is essentially financial planning, right? Do you offer any other packages or options to your customers? For instance, do you offer annuities as an option for your clients to secure through State Farm?
Yes, I do. So, the beautiful thing is I'm actually licensed in investment planning as well.
Okay.
Um, I am. In annuities, we are partnered with Jackson National, which is the number one company for annuities. And just like kind of to put, like you hear annuities, and I just want to kind of like break it down for people. Annuities are when you think about Social Security, right? And all of us kind of like, okay, Social Security. And in our generation, we've heard more than not that Social Security may run out, right? We're hoping that doesn't happen, right? But here's the reality. A typical annuity is really intended to make sure that you don't outlive your money, right? And so many folks in like our parents' generation would have had like a pension. And many companies now may or may not offer a pension. They make it available for people to invest on their own in many cases. But the pension would say, hey, we're going to, pay into a fund during the time that you work with us. And then when you leave, you're going to have the opportunity to annuitize, which means start to draw down funds to be able to live off of. And annuities work the same way. So people who have lump sums of money who want to have an opportunity to take that money and allow it to work for them in multiple ways, right? You can put money into an annuity and say, I'm not going to touch this until I'm X age. I don't intend to use it until I retire. And then at that point, I will draw the funds out. It's really a concept that I would just say it kind of really supports a financial planning process because it couples with what do I have that's in the market that's already working kind of for me. And as you and I both know, and especially in this last year, I'm like, whoa, I look at my assets and I'm like, I'm glad I got a long tail on this. Like I have plenty of time for this to bounce back, right? You want to have a diversified portfolio, meaning multiple things that allow you to, when you're ready to retire, draw your assets as needed. And all of those don't necessarily perform in the same way at the same time, right? So you've got investments, you think about where the investment market is right now, and then you think about having an annuity and having the opportunity to say, I know that I'm going to have this money. It's just like Social Security in your mind of like, okay, this is what I can expect at XYZ age. Now, what's happening in the market is kind of my bonus, right? Because hopefully it'll be up. And then as we get closer to retirement, we're going to start to be thinking more about taking the kind of like the risk elements out of that retirement strategy, right?
Now, are you able to designate a beneficiary for your annuity?
Yes. So, it depends on the type of annuity. Every one of them are different. So an annuity is just kind of like the wrapper, like the package, right? It's a label for that type of asset. Each company that offers it, there are many different ones. And so I would just say, that's a kind of like a whole, you would want to have a whole nother topic to explore it in detail. But the amount of coverage that someone has and how they select that annuity to be annuitized and for people to withdraw if they survive. All of that is very specific to the type of annuity.
Okay. And just to kind of, because I want to explore some other topics with you. So that means that you have to come back as a guest. But if you could just, as we start to wind down, give people just really quick the steps that they should take. If you can go over that again, the steps that they should take to select a company, select an agent, and then how they should go about the process in terms of talking to their agent or prospective agent about coverage.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm going to make it really easy. You don't have to call anybody else. No, I'm just joking. I'll make it really easy. And I'll say this, while I'm in Dallas, Texas, I'm actually licensed in the state of Illinois. I'm licensed in Illinois, Florida, Indiana, New Hampshire. I mean, my list goes on and on, right? I'm not licensed in all 50 states, but I am licensed in Illinois. And it's because I have a lot of relationships there, people who I care about. And I wanted to make sure that, really, to be very frank with you, family and friends were first on my list. These are people that I care about. I don't want to show up to anybody's services and not feel like I've had an opportunity to share and give them the chance to make a decision for their family, so that, that's not a situation that, so that it is a situation that's handled with dignity, grace, and love, right? Those things matter to me. So know that I can be a resource to your listeners as well. But when they're thinking about who to partner with, the company, the longevity of the company is key, right? The financial strength of the company is key, right? Knowing that the company is going to be there and that they're not going to ignore your phone calls when you're calling about, your parents' policy or something like that is really important. The second piece is going with a reputable company. Your loved ones will have a very easy time trying to figure that process out. I can't tell you the number of people that I've worked with that are like, we're still trying to figure out where this policy is, and we've called and that number's disconnected. And I mean, it can be really frustrating. And to be very honest, how many policies are sold and then nobody even knows where they are, and so get unused because there isn't this connection with, this is my agent, this is the policy, this is the company. Even if that agent is gone and retired, this is the company. State Farm is number one in the nation for, obviously you guys know it's for auto insurance and home insurance, but we're number one in the nation for the number of life insurance policies that we have. We're in 80 million households. So if you're working with State Farm and you know that your family member has a policy, it will be a very easy opportunity for you to leverage that when it's time, or for your beloveds to do that in your own scenario. The second piece is get with somebody who knows what the heck they're talking about. Okay. That can give you the nuts and bolts, understands all of the options that are available, but that takes the time to listen to you. Because I can't tell you, I was at the hairdresser and she and I are having this great conversation about like, oh, I've been meaning to get that. And, this company told me, he's like, he'll just give me what he gives everybody. Really? Wow. I mean, that's quite insulting. That'd be like, I'm going to get the same car insurance that you get, and we got two totally different cars. Like, it just doesn't make sense, right? So making sure that a person is taking that personalized approach with you, that they have a heart to take the time to get to know you and your situation, and that they'll give you the options very squarely, right? And allow you to choose. Not just telling you about the policy, but giving you a perspective about how that policy is going to perform over time, what you can expect in the future, options that you have to revisit this, right? I work with people all the time. And they say, you know what, Jocelyn, I can only afford term right now. Perfect. Let's make sure that we set your policy up so that as you grow your assets and you are available to get ready to get a permanent policy, we can take a piece of your term policy. You won't have any underwriting, because once you have a term policy, you can convert a piece of that to permanent without any additional. All of these things matter, right? Helping people to know that those are some of the options. And so I would share with you, I can, my agency phone number here is 817-778-4504. We have a Facebook page. It's Jocelyn Hope State Farm. And we have an Instagram page. And if anybody sends me an inbox, you can DM me. I don't mind. And says, hey, I really just want to learn more. I'm more than happy to take the time to do that. I've done a lot of similar calls to this, and I've done them with people and their family members. Because once we lost our son, I started to do those to say, who needs to know?
Right.
And who needs to choose? And it was so many people that I said I would do small individual Zoom meetings and teach the concept and then schedule individual one-on-one meetings. And so I've been more than happy to do that. I've done that for several families, just to really equip the family to bring their knowledge level up. Everybody on that call from, folks that are our parents' age, all the way down to our, new college graduates and young adults that have families. So that is a very important kind of piece of what I would say when you're trying to find somebody to help you make these choices is having the right team, having the right person.
Well, I'm glad to know that you are licensed in the state of Illinois and in several other states. So that is good to know. I am a State Farm client as well, but I don't know. I'm not getting the individualized personal attention that I used to be accustomed to. So we may need to talk offline about some transition on my end. I think I'm putting my agent on notice.
Oh, your agent's gonna throw some eggs at me. No.
He'll be okay.
He'll be calling you. He'll make it right. He'll make it right.
But I do want to thank you. This was, I think this was a great introduction for people to kind of hear the steps that they need to go through. And again, the importance of life insurance, because like you said, we are required, we're mandated. If we're driving and we own a vehicle, you're mandated to have your car,
liability.
right? But we're not mandated to have life insurance, but why not in yourself, right?
Yes.
And ensure that those that you are leaving behind will have a legacy, and so that is really important. I hope that for those who are tuning in, you share this information with others. So share this particular episode with others, get your families together and start to engage in the conversation about the importance of obtaining life insurance, and call Jocelyn. She is
I'm happy to help.
In several states. So, and this podcast is, heard all over. So hopefully if folks, give you a call and reach out, they're in a state in which you can still help them. But I would like to, again, the invitation is open for you to come back and maybe we can tackle some other more detailed topics. Especially as we're looking at, financial planning and investment, because this economy, I can tell you, we got to make sure we get some things in order.
Amen to that. Amen to that. And you know what? It is such a great opportunity. Just thank you for having me. It was an honor. I know you've been hosting these, and just to know that you believe the topic is worthy to get in front of folks really means a lot. Hearing about your family's connection to the industry and knowing, I'm sure that's had a big impact on your life. But it's the each one teach one. And so taking time to do things like this is just really important. I'm honored to be here and I'm honored to partner. So thanks for having me.
Thank you so much, Jocelyn.
Okay.
Thank you all for tuning in to this week's episode of Light It Up. Make sure you come back next week so that you can see what interesting guests I may have. And as I used to say in all of the other episodes, look, I got to get back to that. Make sure you continue to light it up and shine bright like a diamond.
Oh, beautiful.
Thanks for joining me this week on Light It Up. Make sure you visit my website at www.lightituppodcast.com or www.aginahmuhammad.com. You can also find me on social media using the handle @LightItUpPodcast. If you like what you've heard, please be sure to hit the subscribe button so you'll never miss a show. While you're at it, I'd appreciate a rating on iTunes, or you can simply tell a friend about the show. Be sure to tune in every Tuesday for a new episode. Until next time, light it up and shine bright like a diamond.